Hello everyone, and welcome back to Noita. My name is Craze, and I want to thank you guys once again for joining me on our lesson today in the School of Wizardry. So, before we begin, I want to thank you guys very much for a couple things. The first off is being very patient and waiting for me to come back with another video. It's been quite a while, and that is primarily due to Dragon's Dogma 2 had recently came out, and I wanted to put a lot of time into that. Definitely one of my most anticipated games for the year. I finally managed to pull myself away for a little bit while I wait for more content or something like that coming to the game. So I managed to pull myself away. Additionally, I also want to thank you guys very much for letting us hit 100 subscribers on the channel. I honestly did not expect to hit that. I actually don't know when I remember hitting it, actually. I don't remember what day it was specifically. I know it was sometime after the last video, though, that I put out, which was, I think, like 2 weeks ago from this one to when that one was put out. So, again, I want to thank you guys very much for being patient with me. I want to thank you guys a lot as well for hitting 100 subs. Didn't expect to hit it so soon. But here we are, and I will continue to post more Noita videos in the future, hopefully bringing out these videos a little bit quicker in the future. Now that my Dragon's Dogma binge is over, I can kind of focus back up on this a little bit more. So, with that being said, what is today's lesson? Well, in the last video, I quickly went over a lot of the different stats on the wand and everything, and talking about how all of them can be manipulated or adjusted a little bit. And in that, when I got to cast delay and recharge time, I went over a few spells. I most notably Luminous Drill, Digging Bolt, Digging Blast, and a couple other ones. But also I mentioned Chainsaw, which is going to be today's lesson. And it's going to be the first in what I hope to be sort of a mini series within these lessons called Spell Showcasing, which is where we're going to be selecting a specific spell or a series of spells if they fall into a similar category, and showing them off, explaining what they do and how you can get the most use out of them. And in some cases, how to quickly create some very potent 1-2 punch combos if you are in your runs and you don't really know how to make a spell work. I do believe that just about every single spell modifier, and everything else in this game does have its use somewhere, and while some spells are definitely harder to use than others, I do believe that there is some creativity between everything that you can get some really good potential out of. But we're not going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about today's spell in particular, which I mentioned was Chainsaw. So, if there is any spell that everyone should understand how to use and what all it does, it is absolutely going to be the Chainsaw. Now, why is Chainsaw so important, and why is it so special? Well, it's for a plethora of reasons, and we're going to go over all of them. But for now, let's just kind of start with the basics. What exactly does Chainsaw do? If we hover over it, we can see a good tool for cutting meat, also has some magical properties. It is a projectile type spell that costs 1 mana per cast, does 13 damage in the form of slicing damage with a speed of 200. The speed doesn't really matter here. With a additional effect of reducing your recharge time by 0.17 seconds and increasing your spread by +6 degrees. So, of everything here, we need to specifically look at the recharge time. This is kind of a special thing with the Chainsaw, and it's also stuff that's on many other spells and spell modifiers that reduces the recharge time. I explained this in the last video, but basically when you do a spell that has a reduced recharge time, it reduces the recharge time on the wand, making it so that it reloads faster when you go to actually reload it. So in this case, on this wand's example here, I have a 0.33 recharge time with this Chainsaw here. When I go to shoot it, if you look up here in the corner, my wand recharge time has kind of like this flickering effect. It's going really fast. If I add a second one, it doesn't exist anymore. So that's kind of what this does. But not all is what it seems to be. Not everything here is available on the surface. In fact, Chainsaw is one of those spells that has a hidden effect to it that I mentioned in the previous video, but I'm going to mention it here as well. And it even lays on to the flavor text of the spell itself. And that hidden effect is that when the Chainsaw is cast at its time of casting, it will set your cast delay on the wand to 0. Now again, I showed this off in the previous video, and I even showed the example off. I'm going to show it off in here with these other wands that we have here. But basically, Chainsaw is what allows you to turn any kind of wand that you have into what is normally a pretty okay wand, has some okay fire rate and everything to it, into a wand that has a lot of fire rate, can really bring out its potential. And even more so, if you do something like this, rapid fire rate potentially. So, why does this work? Why does it do this? Well, the first thing when it comes to the chainsaw that we're going to mention is its hidden modifier. As I mentioned, when the chainsaw is specifically cast, it sets the cast delay to 0. So, in the example here for the first wand, we have a wand with a cast delay on the wand itself of 4 seconds. If we don't have the chainsaw on here and we just have the one spell, which we're going to use, the lightning bolt, because lightning bolt's always a pretty good use case example spell for demonstrating cast delay. And the reason why that is because on top of the 4 seconds that we have on the wand itself, the lightning bolt will add an additional 0.83 seconds. So if I go and shoot this, you can see here that I have the cast delay thing flying above me. It takes a very, very, very long time for this to go through. However, if I were to add a double spell here with chainsaw, as I said, chainsaw will, when it is cast, will set the cast delay to 0. So when I cast this in the way that it is, yeah, we'll do it this way first. We'll show you this. It will grab the double spell first, and then it'll grab the chainsaw. The chainsaw will set the cast delay to 0, so it'll turn this 4-second cast delay on the wand to 0, and then it'll hit the lightning bolt, which will increase the cast delay to 0.83. Now, because the lightning bolt is after the chainsaw, that plus 83 is taken into account and it's not set to 0 because it's after the chainsaw. And again, if I shoot this as the example here, it's not rapid firing, but it's not the 4-second delay because the chainsaw was grabbed first and then the lightning bolt. Chainsaw sets this to 0 and then lightning bolt adds the 0.83. Now, if I were to swap this around and set lightning bolt first and then chainsaw, we get a much different effect. We get a much faster firing wand. We get a near rapid fire wand, but we can make this actually rapid fire. And I will explain that in a little bit, but hopefully this gives you the example of why setting up a chainsaw at the very end of your wand is very important and how the cast delay works. I can even do this with this wand down here. Actually, I can just do this. I can even set up here with the triplicate bolt. If I set the chainsaw first, it's actually not working that way. Let's do it this way. If I do just the triplicate bolt, pretty slow. And then if I put the chainsaw with the double spell, and then triple bolt. So chainsaw first, triplicate bolt. So I'm pretty fast firing. And then afterwards, kind of the same thing, but that's because the triplicate bolt doesn't really add that much cast delay, so the difference between this and this is very little. Whereas with the lightning bolt, you saw very noticeable delay. Now, believe it or not, with just this right here, we can actually make this full-on rapid fire. How do we do this? Well, the first example that we could do this with, and the way that we could do this, is a simple way. We could just trade out this double spell for a triple spell, and then put on a second chainsaw. Because these chainsaws are still setting the cast delay to 0, again, it doesn't matter, but they also, again, still have that additional effect of reducing the recharge time by 0.17 seconds. 2.17 seconds will basically set this recharge time on this one to 0. So on top of the chainsaw setting the cast delay to 0 when they are cast, their additional effect of reducing recharge time by 0.17 seconds is also taken into effect. That will also put it to 0. So now if I shoot this wand as is, outside of burning through all of my mana on the wand, I basically have a super rapid fire lightning bolt. We're going to add some mana and to kind of alleviate this a little bit, but even show you here still. I have rapid fire. That is one way you can do it. You can just stack chainsaws until you get rapid fire. However, there is actually a little bit more efficient way to do this. So going back to the original example, with just a single double spell, a single lightning bolt, and a single chainsaw, we can get the effect that we just had not moments ago with the rapid fire lightning. And if the way that you do it is actually really simple and is actually part of a, not necessarily a chainsaw specific thing, but a game mechanic thing that I will make a more in-depth video on called spell wrapping. So if we actually take this chainsaw and instead of putting it at the end of a double spell cast like this, if we actually put it here behind the double spell, what the game will do is it'll grab the chainsaw first initially as a single spells per cast wand. It'll grab this chainsaw by itself. It'll cast it once. And it'll set the cast delay to 0, which it doesn't really mean anything here because nothing's going to happen here. There's nothing it's shooting out as well. But it's also just a 1-frame projectile thing. So it'll immediately cast, set the cast delay to 0, and then immediately cast the double spell because it's, again, it's basically just a 1-frame thing. Now, when the double spell gets grabbed and cast, the first thing it will grab will be the lightning bolt, but it needs to grab a second thing. Well, there's nothing here in front of it needs to grab. So what it will do, and I explained this in the last video as well about a little bit about spell wrapping, is it will go all the way to the start of the wand and keep going until it can grab something again. So in this case, it'll be the chainsaw. So it'll be grabbing this and taking it all the way back here and acting as if it was right here. But it's going to be right here instead. Now, the reason why this will work and why this is going to rapid fire on top of this, as you can see here, is because while cast delay related things are done at the instance of its casting and it only applies to that singular instance, recharge time is taken into account across the entirety of the wand until it resets, basically. This is something that is probably not going to be the best thing to explain, especially not here in the spell showcase when we're discussing the chainsaw specifically thing. But when we get into spell wrapping, I will definitely go into a more in-depth reason on how this all exactly works and the full mechanics on like how the game fully reads a wand in a spell slot to slot kind of deal. But with that in mind, this is how you do make it. This is a way to make your chainsaw work. Even down here, I have another example here where we have a quad cast, 2 triplicate bolts. We're going to get rid of the chainsaws here to kind of show off again how strong chainsaws are. We just have a double. We have a quad cast, but we only have the 2 triplicate bolts here. It doesn't matter here. But if I go to shoot this, it's okay. It's pretty fast. It's not the fastest thing in the world. Add 1 chainsaw. It's a little bit faster. Add a second chainsaw. And it's really fast. But it's still not that full-on rapid fire like the lightning bolt was up here. So instead, same thing, same concept here with the double cast and the quad cast. Instead of putting both of our chainsaws here, we're going to move them behind it. So it'll be chainsaw, chainsaw, quad cast will grab, first spell will grab with triplicate, second one it grabs as a triplicate, needs to grab a third one, so it'll come all the way back around, grab a chainsaw, so it'll be as if we have a third chainsaw here. Well, it's a quad cast, so it needs to grab another one. Again, comes all the way back around to the start, grabs another one, grabs a 4th chainsaw here. So it'll be as if we have 4 chainsaws on this one instead of 2, and we go to shoot it. Outside of the mana, we have rapid fire. So this is the big core concept when it comes to chainsaw, is understanding that when it is cast, it will set your cast delay to 0. You can do this with any spell combination or anything. If you add a chainsaw with it in form of a multicast at the end of it, it will set the cast delay to 0, and it will basically turn the wand into a much faster firing wand. However, there is an exception to this, and you have to kind of be a little bit careful with this, because this can actually get people confused that don't understand it fully. And that is when you try to mix a chainsaw with a trigger. Now, for a lot of players, if you are like me and you couldn't figure this out for a while, you probably will figure out that chainsaw does the rapid fire thing a lot quicker and makes your wand super fast, makes it shoot faster. But you'll also try to add it inside of a trigger spell like so here with, say, a quad cast, and then you'll put like 3 triplicate bolts here and then a chainsaw at the end here, thinking like, okay, this will make it really, really rapid fire. Or actually, we'll do like double triplicate and a double chainsaw, and you'll be sitting here thinking like, okay, this is going to make it rapid fire. But when you shoot it, it doesn't rapid fire. Now, why is that? And the reason why that doesn't work is because this is something that is specifically tied to triggers, and we'll explain this when we do triggers, which, believe it or not, will actually be the very next episode after this one, because triggers are very important as well to learn, but probably not as much so as in Chainsaw. But the reason why this doesn't work the way that you might think it works is because when inside of a trigger, anything that would affect cast delay, again, I want to very, very specifically always emphasize cast delay. Anything that would affect cast delay, if it's set inside of a trigger, will not actually affect the wand itself. So I could put as many chainsaws in here as I really wanted to. So I can do a quad cast, lightning bolt with another triplicate bolt here, and then my 2 chainsaws here. And when I shoot this, it'll still shoot the same fire rate. It doesn't matter, because the cast delay specific portion of this is not being grabbed. The way to get around that is actually quite simple. Because again, you got to think about this. You have to put the chainsaw at the end of when you're being cast, of your cast chain, essentially. Well, when you put all of this inside of a trigger, all of this is going out all at once. But all of the majority of it is inside the trigger. And like I mentioned, anything that's inside of a trigger when it comes to cast delay specifically gets ignored. So the way that we actually get around this is we're going to go back to our quad cast. We're actually going to put all of our main damage stuff inside this quad cast here, inside the trigger. But instead, in front of this trigger, we're actually going to go ahead and move this over here to really emphasize this again. Yeah, move this all over, just like 1 slot over, just to be safe. We're going to put this in front of our trigger. We're going to put a triple spell here. You can do double spell, you can do quad spell, it doesn't matter, but we're going to do triple spell because we only have the 2 chainsaws here. So what's going to happen is we're going to put the triple spell in front of the trigger. And what's going to happen, how the game is going to read this, let me go ahead and spread this out a little bit, is the triple spell will get grabbed. The first spell that it grabs in its triple cast is going to be the trigger. But the trigger now has to trigger its own thing. And its first thing that it's grabbing is the quad. So the quad will now have to go and grab its 4 spells. And its 4 spells will be the 3 triplicates, 1, 2, 3, and the lightning bolt. So this quad stuff here is now, the quad is resolved. And because this was the trigger on the trigger bolt here, the spark bolt trigger, this is resolved. Meaning the first part of the triple spell here is resolved. So the next 2 spells in the triple spell are the Chainsaw 1 and Chainsaw 2. So now, if we go and shoot this, I will probably burn through all of my mana. So we'll actually add a couple mana here just to be safe, so we can actually rapid fire this a little bit more. So we have the mana in here, but again, they have cast delay, but anything related to cast delay is ignored inside of a trigger. It doesn't matter. But if I go and shoot this now as is, so triple spell, spark bolt, quad, the 4 main things, and then 2 chainsaws, we're shooting it a little bit faster. Still not fully rapid fire, but we are getting there. But again, the solution to this is actually still really, really simple. Just move the chainsaw behind the triple spell. So we'll grab the chainsaw first. It will resolve. Triple spell, spark bolt. Spark bolt needs to resolve its thing, which will be the quad. So it'll be the 4 main spells here. The triplicates into the lightning. Trigger has resolved. Still needs to grab 2 more triple spells. It'll grab this one. It'll grab its second one, which will be the second chainsaw, or the first chainsaw in this case. And then the third spell it needs to grab will come all the way around, grab this chainsaw. And now if we shoot this, we have rapid fire. But I'm pretty sure if we did put this chainsaw even here at the very end, yeah, we're still rapid fire here. So this is how you make chainsaws work with triggers. Or a good quick example. That was probably a really, really long-winded example. So let's kind of dumb this down a little bit to make it a little bit more understandable. So we have our trigger. Let's do double cast. Let's put something inside of our trigger. So in this case, we'll do just a single triplicate bolt. Nothing special, nothing crazy. We'll move it up here, actually. And then our second spell that our double cast is going to grab will be the chainsaw. pretty rapid fire. If we put the chainsaw behind it, much rapid fire. So that is how you work with chainsaws inside of the trigger kind of mechanic. Because again, if you put the chainsaw inside the trigger itself, it will not work. You need to cast the chainsaw alongside the trigger. That's kind of what you need to really remember. Not inside, put the chainsaw with the trigger, not inside the trigger, if that makes sense. Now, one more quick little thing that we can kind of set up and show up is, honestly, let's say you don't really have anything that you can really super work with chainsaw. Maybe you don't really have a good spell that you can rapid fire. Maybe you have just not a lot of things, but you conveniently have a trigger. Well, the thing is with chainsaw is it is actually surprisingly a very decently damaging spell. 13 damage is not something to scoff at, but the obvious problem being it's melee. It's close range, it's melee. You can't really do a lot with it by itself. There is, obviously, you can just, the easiest solution to that is just slap it inside of a trigger. You will still get the recharge time bonus of the chainsaw, but you won't get the cast delay because it is inside the trigger here. But even so, you now have a ranged chainsaw. This is a really good 1-2 punch combo, something that you can rely on. You don't really have to think much on it. But obviously, the best way is to try to make it so that you're rapid firing stuff with it. So there is a ton of different modifiers that you can use with chainsaw. There's a ton of different things that you can make to make chainsaw even more effective, more stronger. But again, the big thing that you need to understand when it comes to chainsaw, and it's something that I really hope that this really scuffed video explained, is that it will set your cast delay to 0 whenever it is specifically cast, so long as it is not inside of a trigger. So again, we'll just quickly scuff together the example down here on the lightning wand that I showed before. We have this wand here, 4 seconds. If I shoot it as is, takes a really long time to get back into it. If I do a double cast with chainsaw, shoots pretty fast, gets the blood flowing because it sets the cast delay to 0, but I still have the recharge time. But if I want to go and essentially try to double up on a chainsaw, if I only had the one, put the chainsaw behind the double spell, your multicast, whatever it might be, and you can rapid fire like this. And again, if you want to use it alongside of a trigger, make sure that the chainsaw is outside of the trigger's grabbing range. So we come back down here on our first one on here. Double spell with trigger. Our trigger is now got to get payloaded up. So we'll put the quad cast into triple bolt, triple bolt, triple bolt. And just because we can, we'll do the lightning bolt. So the payload for the the trigger is now set up. We're actually going to go ahead and swap this out for triple spell. We still need to grab 2 more spells for a triple spell. So we'll do 1, 2. And now we have a pretty rapid fire trigger spell. We'll change that out for chainsaw just because it's a little bit more consistent. And again, because now we have 3 chainsaws, our recharge time is being forced to 0 seconds. And because the chainsaws here, these last 2 chainsaws specifically, are not inside this trigger and are being casted at the end of this triple spell here, our cast delay is set to 0. So we are rapid firing that. So this was an extremely scuffed thing. I know it was. It's been a while since I've done a video. But I do hope that these examples explain to you the power of chainsaw and why it is so important for everyone to understand them, for everyone to learn them, and for everyone to learn the power of them. There was definitely more things that I could explain, but I already feel like this shit is going to be scuffed enough as is, and I feel like I probably could have explained these things a lot better, but I'm just not great at this. As much as I love teaching, I'm not the best when it comes to teaching. I'm very rambly, as you guys have probably figured out by now in all these videos. But I do hope that this video does explain a lot of things. If it does not, I would highly recommend looking up the creator by the name of Dunk or Slam. He has also done a video discussing chainsaw. Also a little bit rambly like me, but he probably does a little bit more of a clear explanation showing off exactly what everything does. But if this video or that video does not help you at all, definitely come back and ask me a question about it in the comment section below. I will do my best to explain it in a text format if that does not to help you guys out. But otherwise, I do hope you guys do enjoy this video. Again, I want to apologize for the long delay in this video and the last one. And I do want to also thank you guys very, very much on getting us to 100k, not 100k, yeah, okay, 100 subs. Again, was not expecting it. We'll continue to push more videos out on Noita as time goes on. The next one that we are going to be covering over is going to be, again, another spell showcasing kind of deal. And in fact, we actually kind of got a demonstration of it through the form of triggers. We're actually going to be discussing triggers as a whole, not necessarily Spark Bolt with triggers, but we are just going to be discussing the entire trigger style spell line and how they work and how you can make best use out of them. However, that is not to be confused with the special modifier of add trigger. Add trigger is its own special kind of thing that is going to have its own dedicated video to it as well when we get around to it. For now, we're just going to be looking at the baseline add spells with triggers themselves in the next video. So, with all of that being said, I want to thank you guys so much for coming in today and watching this lesson. Again, sorry for the very long delay. Dragon's Dogma caught me up really well. I want to thank you guys again for the 100 subs. And until the next one, I will see you guys later. Take care of yourselves, drink some water, hug your loved ones, and until next time, take care of yourselves, and happy noiting.